Hey guys, welcome back to CakeTube for our first ever CakeTubes Days. My name is Jen, and today we are going to be making this rainbow crackle fondant cake, complete with rainbow water ganache strips and rainbow rosettes. Both the crackle effect and the water ganache are techniques that I learned from Liz over at the Sugar Geek Show. Liz is extremely talented and creative. She's my very favorite cake artist, so I highly recommend you check out her stuff. I have linked her channel below, so go show her some love. There are 3 basic steps to creating this fun fondant texture: coloring the fondant, airbrushing the fondant, and creating the crackle effect. Let's get into the details of each step. I am using Renshaw fondant and coloring it with Cake Craft gels. These gels are amazing and take very little to get a vibrant color. I picked up mine at Joann's Crafts, but I've also linked below where you can buy them online. To create the rainbow base, I rolled out each color and combined them to create an uneven rainbow pattern. This would also be fun to try with a traditional rainbow gradient. Be sure not to overmix your colors or you will end up with a muddy brown. While I was mixing, I made sure that all 6 colors were visible and nothing was hidden within the fondant. Once your fondant is mixed to your satisfaction, it's time to roll it out. First, lay down a generous base of cornstarch to roll the fondant out on. This will be especially important when we introduce our blowtorch later to ensure the fondant does not stick to your surface. Roll the fondant out to about 1/4 inch thick. Here I'm cutting the fondant down to a more manageable size for paneling our cake later, but this step is not necessary because you'll be rolling the fondant out again, so it will distort the perfect lines that you cut. But I chose to do this because I could reuse the excess fondant that I'm cutting off now because it won't be crisped up by the torch, but you can do whatever works best for you. After your fondant is rolled out, it's time to airbrush. Before getting the airbrush gun out, be sure to wipe away any excess cornstarch with a fluffy brush just to make sure that it doesn't alter the texture of our fondant when it is hit with the blowtorch. Using black airbrush color, work back and forth over the surface of the fondant to lay down a thin, even layer of color. Make sure not to lay it on too thick, otherwise it will take a very long time to dry and could end up being a mess. If you don't have access to an airbrush, you can use a regular paintbrush to paint on the layers. However, if you are using a paintbrush, it's important that you are still using airbrush color to do this and that you give the piece plenty of time to dry. After the first layer has dried completely, go over the entire piece again with the second layer and allow that to dry completely as well. Next up, the fun part. Take a creme brulee torch or any type of torch you have and work the flame back and forth over the entire fondant piece to slightly melt and toast the very top layer of the fondant. I actually ended up going over the piece twice to make sure it was toasty enough to give me some good crackling. Allow the entire piece to cool completely before moving forward. Once your piece is completely cool, make sure it's not stuck down to your surface, and then take a rolling pin and begin rolling over the entire piece slowly, and you can watch the rainbow come to life. I really made sure I pressed kind of firmly to make sure that the crispy layer did not flake off, but just take your time here and don't be afraid to go over the same area numerous times. Just be sure not to roll your fondant too thin. ' Once your fondant is crackled to your liking, you can again cut your piece down to size. Then, roll your fondant piece up from one end. This is also another reason why the cornstarch is so important. It would be so sad if your fondant stuck together at this point. Set that aside while we prepare our cake dummy. A cake dummy is a piece of styrofoam that looks exactly like a tier of cake, but it's, well, styrofoam. Ever wonder how the bakery down the street has had the same cake in the display for 3 years? That's a cake dummy. Cake dummies are also often used in wedding cakes to supplement actual cake tiers. These are especially helpful to film videos with because you can do all the same things to them that you can do to a cake. Plus, I don't have to waste an entire baked cake because it doesn't get eaten in time, so you'll be seeing a lot more from our friend the cake dummy here on this channel. Anything I can do on a cake dummy can be done to an actual cake, so you will be able to recreate any of these tutorials with ease. Preparing a cake dummy is just a little different than prepping an actual cake. You can easily cover a cake dummy in buttercream to attach fondant, but a much easier method is to cover the dummy in vegetable shortening. Here I am covering the top of my dummy in shortening, and then I have rolled out a piece of fondant that I then place on top. For this cake, it doesn't matter what color the fondant on top looks like because it will be covered by ganache. Use your hand or fondant smoother to firmly adhere your fondant to the dummy and then cut off the excess with a sharp knife. You prepare the side of the dummy the exact same way as the top. Once your dummy is coated in shortening, take your rolled up crackled fondant and begin unrolling it around your cake, making sure to firmly press it to the styrofoam as you work your way around. After you've made it all the way around the cake, cut a straight line where the two ends of the fondant meet and begin adhering the fondant to the styrofoam, working out the wrinkles and bubbles. If you come across a tear in the fondant, this design makes it really easy to just push the fondant together and cover it up. And lastly, remove the excess fondant from the top and bottom of the cake. To remove the excess cornstarch from your newly fondanted cake, just fill your airbrush gun with a little bit of water and mist away. You can also easily do this with a spray bottle or really light-handed with a paintbrush and some water as well. Next, let's make the water ganache. This ganache goes against everything we know about chocolate and water, so go check out Liz's video for an awesome explanation of the science behind this recipe. Liz's recipe calls for 6 ounces of chocolate to 1 ounce of warm water. A scale is key here for measuring everything. Once your chocolate is measured, melt it in the microwave in 30-second increments, but be careful not to burn it. Here I am just using Wilton candy melts. Once melted, add your water and stir until you come out with a beautiful glossy ganache. Fair warning, it does take quite a bit of mixing to get it all to come together. I only bought blue, yellow, and red candy melts, knowing I could mix colors to make orange, green, and purple. To mix the colors, it's as easy as combining 2 ganache colors together. Here I am showing you how I made the green. This recipe was so easy and very cost effective. Once your ganache has cooled a little, you can add each color to a piping bag and begin making your drips. I didn't want drips that went all the way down to the bottom, so I took care not to add too much ganache as I was piping along the top. You'll notice that I made orange ganache, but it didn't actually end up on the cake because, as you can see here, I did something very wrong and it ended up being a goopy mess, and I didn't have enough chocolate left to make more orange. Work your way around the cake in rainbow order until it's completely dripping in rainbow. Then take a small spatula and marble the ganache together on top of the cake. Our final step is to add some rainbow rosettes. To learn how to prepare the buttercream for this technique, check out my rainbow rosette cake video that is linked below. Once your rosettes are piped, you are done. This cake uses a lot of fun techniques but is surprisingly easy to do and creates such a fun effect with the rainbow peeking out from behind the black. If you recreate this cake or any of my other cakes, I would love to see your work. You can share that with me on Instagram by using the hashtag @CakeTUBEjb. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please be sure to follow me on Instagram @CakeTUBEjb and subscribe here to my YouTube channel to be notified when new cake tutorials are posted. Have a great day.